What up? Welcome to first Takedown episode 4. Hunter, how you doing?
Pretty tired, man. Nationals is just a long few days.
Yeah.
So got back Sunday, which was yesterday. We're recording this on a Monday. Just a long few days of hanging out and watching wrestling. Probably, drinking a little bit too many beverages, but
Yeah.
it's all
Yeah.
part of the experience.
Good soda pop. Good soda pop up
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. A little sugar overdose of too many Coca-Colas and Sprites and things like that.
Yeah. Well, we got a lot to unpack. I mean, obviously you were in Philadelphia for NCAAs, so you saw a lot of stuff just right in front of you. Some craziness over the
Craziness.
past few days, and then I know we were texting a lot, some group messages and some other stuff, and put out some picks last week. Some we made some right calls. Some that we just shoot our shot our shot.
Yeah, you'll get
Is
there.
that
You'll get there. Something like that. Now, we'll get into it. Obviously, I mean that's the headlines, right? The wrestling stuff. But what's crazy from wrestling the NCAA tournament now from years in the past is that right after the tournament's over, everybody's projecting for next year.
Yep.
Everybody's thinking about the next. It's literally the next day, or like it's honestly not even the next day. It's like the day of Saturday morning. It's like the guys that maybe didn't place, or guys that they're thinking about are backups, or you're thinking about the guys that are going to graduate. They finish that Saturday morning session, and there's already murmurs, and there's already talks, and I'm sure there's backroom talks going on.
Yeah,
But
even the guys at like smaller schools that had, great tournaments, that's something to think about now too. Like those guys are like,
a
ooh,
hundred
I don't know,
percent.
they could maybe be somewhere else. They could maybe
A
be like a
hundred
Big Ten next
percent, and
year.
that's all happening, and people like all that stuff is happening, and so projecting for transfers, things like that. But I mean, I would say the biggest news, obviously outside of the wrestling world, is Manosuke Ono, the world champion, 61 kilograms for Japan, came on today this morning on Flow Wrestling Radio Live and announced that he's committing to Penn State. So I guess there was murmurs going on that he was in the Penn State student directory, so he was already, I guess, enrolled, or he was in the student directory, or was maybe pre. I don't know if you're just in there and wasn't enrolled in classes, or he was going to enroll in classes. But he comes out today, first thing Monday morning, and says that he's committing to Penn State and he's wrestling for Penn State next year. Um, I mean, just an absolute blockbuster of news. It's unprecedented, I would say. I don't really know what other word to use besides that. Kind of nutty given how good Penn State looked. I mean, they broke the scoring record this weekend, and
Yeah.
then again, and then on top of that, they get maybe the best wrestler in the world with college eligibility on their team. So
Yeah,
insane
yeah.
weekend.
10 All-Americans, and it felt a little bit weird because they only had two national champs, but yeah, people are talking like, well, I don't know, maybe it's going to even the playing field, and then this happens today. You're like, oh, okay, well, never mind. They take it up another level, go international.
It's like I said, it's unprecedented. I mean, we haven't really seen this happen at the college level. We've seen guys come in from different countries. That's not really, I guess what I'm saying necessarily is we've never seen a team. It's always maybe like you've seen maybe Iowa State do it with a couple of the Cuban guys, Bastida. You saw the Citadel do it years and years ago
Yeah,
with Ugi and
Turtog.
then Turktog, the guys out of Mongolia. So, I mean, we've seen it before. It's just never been like mainstream, and it's never been the best guy in the world, and it's
Yeah,
never been the best team in the world. So, obviously, this is going to get a lot more publicity at being him, this guy, and then it also being this team.
yeah, and I'm interested to see if this does open the door up for more international guys to go over here in the States and wrestle. I mean, obviously different styles, so you wonder how that's going to to come out like in the first year. I mean, he's gonna have some amazing training partners to go. But I remember with Oogie, who was at the Citadel, who's just an amazing freestyle wrestler. His first year, he was getting turned by everybody. Not everybody, but he was getting turned a lot. And then once it started to click towards him, and then he got what was that fourth NCAAs and
Well, what's interesting is, I mean, this isn't like, I don't even know where this guy's at. I haven't really heard much of him, but you'd think about a guy that would potentially be his teammate or could transfer just because of this news, Aaron Nagao. Just think about that matchup. Like, I'm not saying it would go one way or the other. Think about the complete contrast of styles of those two people and the way that they wrestle. Ono, one of the best in the world on his feet, obviously really good snap downs, go behind scores. We saw how good he looked against Spencer Lee and Vito this year. But you've got a guy that has a difference maker, that's a difference maker on top like Nagao. How does that, like, if those guys, let's just say hypothetically they wrestle in the room, how is that going to go if you wrestled like a match in the room, you wrestled a match day? What, I mean, Aaron Nagao could, you know, he could give up 3 takedowns in 3 minutes, and I don't really think many people would be like surprised by that. Let's say, you know, it's 9-3 after the end of, you know, the first period, and Nagao just goes like this, and you know, how does that go? I'm just curious. A guy like that, if Ono's gonna wrestle at the collegiate level, he's gonna have to wrestle on the bottom at points in times, and a lot of people are gonna say, well, he's just gonna outtake him down, which is fine. And I'm sure he could win a lot of matches doing that. But when you got a prolific turner on top, maybe not a rider, but a guy that's a prolific turner, that's where it becomes a little bit of a difference maker. I mean, obviously, I'm a wrestling guy. I'm super curious to see how it's all going to play out. But huge news this morning outside of the NCAA tournament.
it's super cool too. And I think I mean, just looking at the styles and watching so much wrestling this past weekend, I mean, depending on how that bottom wrestling goes, I feel like so much of the style has switched over to that freestyle sort of attack. I mean, think about how many times you heard refs this weekend saying stop, interlock the fingers. I'm like, you didn't see that much until like some of these guys got into this freestyle circuit, like at this different level. And I feel like,
With the takedown being 3 points too, it's more
yeah,
advantageous to just be better on your feet. You score more
right,
points from that area. Not to say that bottom wrestling and top wrestling isn't important. It's still important because these matches are a lot of times 1 takedown matches or 0 takedown matches. So then that becomes the important part of the game. But if you're that prolific on your feet and you're scoring multiple takedowns in a match, you might not have to have the chops to get off bottom. So I don't know. We'll
yeah.
see. It's going to be interesting.
I am interested to see just in the future, like if this does open the door to some other, international guys coming over. I mean, Japan having, one of their best years in wrestling, and
Right.
then also one of their best wrestlers now coming over here. Does that open up like
Well, I mean,
we could see?
you've already seen a lot of the guys that have come over and just trained
The
when they finish.
RTCs and stuff.
They win an Olympic title. They come over to the U.S. and they train. God, Odaguru, the last Olympic champ at 65 kilos prior to Kyoko winning.
Hmm.
He's been training at Iowa. He trains at Iowa now. So it's just all these guys have been coming over here and training with college teams, and then obviously their RTCs as well. So it definitely is intriguing. It's going to be interesting to see if maybe other countries start to do that, but we're definitely seeing that contingent from Japan come over and wrestle and train with these teams. So that part of it's interesting. Obviously, that's a huge commitment from Ono, but then we're really going to start getting into transfer portal season.
Yeah.
It's already hot. I mean,
Well,
just
yeah. Let's jump into that now. I mean,
yeah.
what are some? I mean, some of the big names that are now just already in the transfer portal, like the week of the NCAA tournament, even like before it started,
Right.
right? Was it Thursday that it opened up? Or
I think that you can put your name. If I'm not mistaken, it starts happening right around the time that the conference weekend is over. So I don't know if it opens up then, or you can kind of put your name in whenever. It's just really not advantageous for you to put your name in prior to that time, because then the team can stop allowing you to use the facilities stop allowing you to train there. If I'm not mistaken, the rules change all the time, and especially with transfer portal, the rules have changed, very recently just because there's so much heat on it at the moment. But a lot of guys, you saw them going in right in there on that conference, at the end of conference championships, and then the last maybe week and a half, week. But just some of the biggest names that you've got in there. You've got a guy that I think he just went in today, Spencer Moore, national qualifier at UNC. You've got Casey Swiderski, national qualifier for Iowa State. I don't think Alex Facundo. I don't think Swiderski placed. He could have maybe taken 7th or 8th one year. I'm not 100% sure on that. Mm-hmm. But anyways, those are some of the bigger names that you'll see in there. Caleb Rathje just went in for Iowa, or he was wrestling at Iowa. I'm trying to think of some of the, maybe some of the bigger names that I can remember. Mm-hmm. But Christian Carroll's in there. That's a guy that's in there that he was at. Well, he had originally. This is crazy. This guy committed to Illinois, like day one that you could commit, basically that you could contact guys. Decommitted, committed to Penn, committed to UPenn, decommitted from UPenn, committed to Oklahoma State, went to Oklahoma State, got in the transfer portal when the coaching staff left, and then went to Iowa State, and now is back in the transfer portal. So this would be his 3rd school that he'd be on, and also it would be his, I guess, 5th total time that he's maybe either committed to a school or, thought about said that he's going to another program. So yeah, that's an interesting one. I'm not a big fan of all that moving around. I think that's too much, but we'll see what happens there. That's a guy that, definitely has the capabilities. He's, made the junior world team. Really, really, really tough guy. So we'll start to see some more of these names trickle in, but you got to think about a guy like, what does Alex Facundo do? I think maybe to me, there's 2 options. It's an Oklahoma State or it's a Michigan, in my mind. Now, I'm not saying that. Yeah, go ahead.
Michigan guy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember watching him in high school a little bit. I like the Northern Regionals, I think. And
they have a need for it too. I mean, they just had Saldate. He's gone. They have a need for it. Oklahoma State has a need for it, and there's obviously that history there with that coaching staff coming over from Penn State. I don't know how close he is to those guys, but you got to imagine they all spent some time together. So that's one right off the rip that you think. Obviously, Tay Gadiali committed to Michigan, so that's a huge domino from Campbell. He ended up committed to Michigan, so that's a big one. And then, I guess the rest are just speculation, right? Like, if you're looking into it, who would you kind of speculate and kind of think, oh, well, we could see this guy get into the portal? And you got to automatically think about some Penn State guys, I think, personally.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to ask you about that, because I had somebody ask me that this weekend. Like, Penn State being the dynasty that it is, do you think it will still have the same level of commitment to Penn State now that we've started to see a little bit of like a few guys like Barraclough, are really good wrestlers. His first year not at Penn State, and starts and is an All-American. So you have guys like Facundo that are underneath just a deep weight class. Do you think that will open up some of the eyes to some guys like, okay, actually I could All-American at a school and not be sitting on the bench and maybe get my shot at Penn State?
I think what will happen is what has continued to happen is that they will get the recruits out of high school. They will get the pick of the litter, and then whenever those guys figure it out in the room, we probably didn't see KSAC coming, right? Like, I knew KSAC was tough, but I didn't see KSAC just being there starting 49 last year and then being there starting 57 this year and just being a guy that's like, he's in their lineup. You do all these projections and then you see how things are going to play out, and those guys kind of figure it out in the room. And then from there, I think you'll see, okay, a Bear Claw realizing, hey man, like, I'm not going to be the starter and it's my senior year, I'm going to go somewhere else. Or I'm not going to be the starter, it's my junior year, I'm going to go somewhere else. I tried. I really wanted to be here and be the best. And there's a guy that's better than me right now, or there's a guy that the coaching staff believes in a little bit more than me. And that's going to be the guy. So I think we'll kind of continue to see that because, the best recruitment is what happens these 3 days in March. When athletes see those guys dominate, that's where they want to go to school. And so I think you'll see the best athletes go to 2 schools, and that's Penn State and that's Oklahoma State. And I'm not saying that the other really good ones won't go to Iowa and won't go to Ohio State and Michigan and other great programs like that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying when it comes down to it, the difference makers, the bulk of them are going to go to those 2 schools because Penn State has continued to do it and Oklahoma State just made a statement this year. Mm-hmm. They made a statement these last 3 days. Absolute statement. Athletes are going to see that and they're going to react. They're going to really react. I think they already had some momentum and now they put they had just as many champs as Penn State in year 1. They haven't been there. David hasn't even been there a year. Year 1 and they had just as many champs.
And the 2 champs are 2 guys that transferred there.
Transferred there and they got them ready in a year. They got those 2 guys ready in a year to beat 2 all-timers in the finals. All-timers, 2-time national champs in the finals. And not to mention in the semis, beat another national champ. Undefeated national champ the prior year. Both guys, undefeated national champ.
Crazy.
It's shocking. I mean, and I think that's the biggest takeaway from the weekend to me. We'll get into Nebraska. That's a huge takeaway as well, just how insanely good they were. But, I mean, David's there for 300-something days, and they do that. I don't know, man. It's really, really impressive.
On the transfer portal, are we now past the point where we'll see these like super seniors because of the COVID year and stuff? I feel like every year I've been like, oh, this is maybe the last year I think we see some, but is it now, or do we still have just a few guys that will be kind of trickle around that might be able to transfer for like?
Yeah, we'll have some guys still, just because of the way that you're able to get creative now with not only medicals, but with Olympic red shirts, normal red shirts. If you think about it, so 2021 was the COVID year, okay? So theoretically, you could have wrestled in 21. You could have redshirted in 22, went 23, 24, 25, and still you'd have another year in 26. So we're not past it yet, and we could see it beyond. I mean, some guys could have. I mean, I don't know who is in this category. I don't think anybody is in this category that took an Olympic red shirt last year. But I'm just thinking somebody that could have hung around. I mean, Gable came back and took an Olympic red shirt, but I mean, not really, but he did. That's the way that they said that he was able to come back. But I don't think anybody's in that scenario, but somebody could theoretically take a medical and still do it. But I think we're on the tail end. I think we've got like Brock Hardy, and I'd have to go look. I think maybe like a Tommy Askey actually has another year. And some guys like that you think are like really old, and they are, but they just have another year, and we didn't know. So we're not completely through with it yet.
Okay, well, what are your thoughts on the transfer portal as a whole for like, when do you think it's like, where's your moral for like if somebody goes from like a smaller school to a bigger school? Because I feel like it's a little bit different if you have somebody that like a Wyatt Hendrickson, I've got one more year to use. I'm going to use it at Oklahoma State. I feel like that's a little bit different. Okay, yeah, go ahead and do that. But what is it from these guys that maybe change from like a Big Ten to a Big Ten, or even like from a smaller school to a bigger school? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't care one bit if a guy has a good year somewhere at a smaller school and decides that he wants to go to a bigger school. Just if him and his family and the people around him decide that, hey, I want to, put my name in the portal and see what I'm worth and go out there and do that, I'm totally fine with that. My problem is when a guy is happy with where he's at and you come to him via proxy or come to him with somebody else and basically give him an offer without him going in the portal. I think that's slimy. To me, that's slimy. If you go in the portal yourself, by all means. At that point, coaches contact you and reach out to you, but that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. Guys are getting contacted without going into the portal, and to me,
Are you
that's
talking about more so on the coach's side or whoever it is, like
correct.
the
From
NIL
the athlete's
side of it?
perspective, do what you want, man.
Mhm.
If somebody's going to offer you that and you're willing to put your name out there in the portal and do that, that's fine. But if you're happy with where you're at and you're like, I'm locked in with where I'm at, these coaches got me here, I'm going there, and then all of a sudden someone comes and swoops in and, does something like that, to me that's a little foul. I don't know, I guess it's all perspective. Some people probably have a different perspective than I do, but to me, that's where I draw the line. And I mean, we can get into this. It hadn't worked out for the poachers, the guys that have gone after those guys. It didn't work out this weekend.
Yeah,
It didn't.
that's what I was gonna ask next.
For your teamers, your Parcos, they scored you 1 team point. Combined. So that's
They might not be that upset about it.
Teamer and Parco are they're probably fine with it.
Yeah.
I mean, makes no difference to them. Now, they're probably not happy with the way that their careers ended. I can't imagine that they're happy with that portion of it. But the motivation factors become different when, those, fifth year, 6th year senior, and those days are hard. Those are some of the hardest days that you can imagine going through those national tournament days. It's a little easier to kind of just be like, well, at least I got this in my back pocket, win or lose, I've got this back here,
Yeah.
so I can just kind of always go back to that. So
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Things can change when you get big bucks like that. They have been tossed around. I don't know exactly how much those guys were paid, but just
Yeah.
from rumors that you hear.
Well, it changes the game for sure. It changes it, and
Yeah.
changes what your thoughts of like what your goals are. Like, well, my goal is to live a happy life after this. So, to do what you
It's a good
want to
start.
do. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, let's
So
do it.
let's do it. Let's get into the weekend. Highs, lows, biggest things you saw. How do you want to attack this? Because there's just so much to unpack.
We'll go headlines first. 2 biggest headlines. I'll say, obviously Wyatt Hendrickson beating Gable Steveson. The moment of the tournament. It was a storybook ending for the weekend that you probably couldn't write in a movie. Like it was something that it was magical because of how real it was, but at the same time, it felt like you were having an out of body experience watching what you were watching. Just the way that it happened. I sat here 2 weeks ago and said that Gable, he's not beatable. He's not. I don't think that anybody can beat him. And the guy got beat. He got straight up beat. And the way he handled it was awesome. He's been a class act. He came on Pat McAfee today and just had great things to say. And so, yeah, he's been great, but oh my gosh, man, just felt unreal. And then Wyatt having the American flag on his back, saluting the president. I do not care what your political affiliation is. If you like Donald Trump or not, or if you don't, I could care less. That moment right there was incredible. It was
sweet.
It was incredible.
He's an Air Force guy, especially if you know his background. Like right before the match, we were like, "Can you imagine if he lost?" Like just so out there. Like, what if?
Yeah.
That would be the biggest. That would be the biggest upset. And then at the very end, I sent a video to Cole today because it was of David Taylor and Tyler Codwell in the back, pushing each other and grabbing each other. I
Yeah.
was like, that's what I imagine so many people are like this, but that's how we were watching the TV, like,
Oh my gosh.
But
Yeah.
so I want to know how was it? I mean, obviously we could see it through the TV, we were going crazy, but how was it in the arena at that takedown, and especially that last bit of mat return after it?
Well, it was the last moment of the tournament, and it was the biggest moment of the tournament. So I compare the loudness to the Spencer Lee Matt Ramos moment, where Matt Ramos pinned Spencer Lee a few years ago. As far as how loud it was in there, very, very similar. But the difference is this was like the culmination of the weekend, and this was the grand finale. And we got to see it as the final thing of the weekend. And that one was almost like it happened, and it was the very beginning of the semis. And then the rest of that Friday night, everybody's just like exhausted, like they're beat because their emotions were so running so high. Man, I tried to put it into words, and it's probably bad radio to have a podcast and not really be able to describe it in words, but it was magical. I don't know any other way to say it than just watching that and seeing that moment happen. And then I saw a tweet, someone say this, it was like I was watching two gladiators battle in Rome, and then like at the very end of it, and like, you know, it's whoever, I don't know, think of like David Goliath, legitimately like a David versus Goliath story, and they're doing it in the Colosseum. Yeah. They're doing David versus Goliath in the Colosseum, and then at the very end, David, let's say he kills Goliath, he looks up at the leader of the world, the leader of our country, and just shows the most respect that you could show. I mean, that's how I don't know. It just felt.
Well, the one thing I'll say, I didn't see this till after, but did you see the one clip of Wyatt saying, "Is there anybody else? Is there nobody else?" Like a
no.
clip from, yes, he did.
That's amazing.
From Gladiator. He said it from when he was walking. It's like, "Is there nobody else?" And I was like, "Shoot, I didn't see that."
Oh my gosh.
Watched, like,
we got to get Bruce Baumgartner out of freaking retirement.
But and that, like, well, number one, I couldn't sleep. Like, you know, I was just scrolling, watching every video on Saturday after that, and, you know, telling people that didn't, like, even still today, I'm telling people about it that didn't even watch wrestling. I'm like, "Hey, but did you happen to see this clip about this guy?" And because it was just like, it's one that we'll remember forever. Or, like,
forever.
You know, people talk about the biggest upset of, like, if it was, you know, the other Gable upset, but it's the one of our generation that so much of us are going to remember.
That's the other parallel is Gable, like, it really felt like it was just that. It was the Dan Gable upset of our generation. I mean, it literally felt that. I mean, we're watching the guy named after Dan Gable lose in the national finals after being this, you know, Thanos level, like, not villain, but just so over that he can't be defeated. He can't be beaten. You have to bring out magic and go back in time to try to beat him type of, you know, this is this guy. He's this super, you know, I'm not obviously not a villain. He's the man, but he did kind of try to make himself a little villainous at the very beginning when he comes out and he's chirping, and
loved it.
Loved it. It was amazing showmanship. I honestly, and I thought about this, and obviously I don't think this. I don't actually believe this. I just thought about it from the spirit of Gable being in the WWE. It felt like, and this isn't what I'm saying, it's a real sport. We're comparing apples and oranges with the WWE and comparing the NCAA Wrestling Tournament. But people might not get this reference. I think it was WrestleMania. The Undertaker was like 21-0, and he's never lost in WrestleMania history, like ever. Never lost. And they didn't think he was retiring then, so he was wrestling Brock Lesnar, and he puts Brock Lesnar over. Brock Lesnar beats him, right? Brock Lesnar beats him. The whole crowd is stunned, jaws drop to the floor. That's how this felt. And I almost was like, Gable, like, he didn't put him over, but we created an even bigger star in our sport because of how big of a star Gable Steveson is. We created such a big star this weekend, and Wyatt came out and said he's going to try to make the Olympic team in 28. And I don't know if Gable's going to wrestle. From what it sounded like today on his Pat McAfee interview, he's going to start trying to transition into MMA. He may do some more football stuff. He's going to kind of, test the waters. I'd love for him to stay in wrestling because I'd love to watch those guys try to make the world team this year or try to make the Olympic team in 28 and see what happens there. But I think he'll start getting into fighting maybe. And, oh, man.
One of my buddies was like, book that rematch if you're like a promoter, like try to get them to
Do
go
it.
again immediately. But yeah,
Do
I don't
it.
know. It'll be interesting. But man, what a way to finish. I know, like the big explanation, like the drama of people arguing about how they laid out the finals, and then after,
Right.
like Jordan Burroughs, Rock Harrison, like
Yeah.
they did a little
Well,
Michael Jordan,
you're
like
welcome. Could
yeah,
you imagine? Could you imagine if they started at 97
yeah,
and finished with Carter, and that was the second match of the evening, and then hey, all respect to Vincent Robinson and Troy Spratley, that was the most boring match of the night. Troy Spratley and Vincent Robinson, they neither one of them really did anything.
mm-mm.
At 33, at least Lucas Bird was going after Ayala, right? At 41, crazy back and forth match,
Yeah,
right? Hardy comes out, takes Mendez down, puts him to his back. Mendez storms back, blast double, turns him. 49, similar to 25, I would say, but I just think Caleb stayed on Ridge, and you know how tricky Ridge is to finish on, so that was still a little bit of fun to watch those exchanges, even though there wasn't a ton of scoring going on. 57, I thought that was, a decent matchup. 5, Messenbrink, comes out, does his thing. Hamidi O'Toole, awesome. Amazing exchanges. 97, it was kind of like you're getting amped up for 285, But gosh, I mean, finishing with that, amazing. I'm so glad that that's how it ended up turning out. And then, starting at 84, obviously there was some controversy to that. And, I don't think Carter necessarily was happy with that. I mean, he had his chance to win 5 national titles and that he's starting off the night. But I understand the purpose of it. I think there was a security reason too with Trump being there.
mm-hmm.
I think because that's such a big match and they knew nobody would want to miss that. They started with that one to make sure everybody was in the building so that there was better security around that. They didn't really want a bunch of people walking the concourse while that was going on, in my opinion. That's
Makes
just what
sense.
I think. And then Trump came out right after that match and did his thing, waved to the crowd, went and sat down and watched the rest of the finals.
I
And
did
then apparently,
hear. Did you
go
hear that
ahead.
he's supposed to leave? That he's supposed to leave 2 matches
I
before
was
the
just about to
tournament?
say that he was supposed to leave 2 matches before, and he had to watch his big guy Wyatt. So
Yeah, yeah.
so cool,
That's
man.
that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, but let's get into let's get into a few of the weights. I think just some of the biggest takeaways. Obviously, we talked last week, and me and you were both really high on Spratley. I had him finishing third, and I thought that was too bullish, and he finished ahead of that. You had him making the finals, and you
Getting
were
second.
correct. You had him taking second, and he did take second, just not to the guy that that either one of us thought was going to win the tournament, which was Lillidahl. We can talk about that match a little bit with Seymour. That was kind of a nip and tuck match in the duel. It was a close match, and Seymour just stayed stingy, man. He just stayed really stingy, and ends up taking out Lillidahl. But I'll say I was more impressed with what Lillidahl did on the backside than pretty much anything else in that bracket at 125.
Yeah, and that's what it was. I mean, that's the big upset right of that bracket. It was like we both had Lillidahl to win, but then yeah, for him to come back and pin Ramos for third, beat Ventresca in overtime, but just looked like he was like, all right, well, I know now I'm gonna have to dominate here, and I'm not
Yeah,
settling for anything other than third. And he
yeah,
he looked.
and the Seymour win over Lillidahl really overshadowed the Spratley win over Ramos. I mean, at the event, it was people were watching that Sheldon Seymour match. I feel like way more than it was being watched for the Matt Ramos match. And I don't know. I just feel like that one got a little overshadowed, even though there was a big, also another big upset on the bottom side with Spratley taking him out. And then, obviously Spratley takes out Ventresca and Vincent Robinson takes out Sheldon Seymour, setting up that final. Vincent Robinson just getting it done. I think you could tell they were a little a little reserved, and I think Spratley more so than anybody because of some of the exchanges he lost in their dual meet earlier in the year.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, close match. Vincent Robinson gets it done, national champ, and yeah, I mean, a pretty fun weight all year. I thought Lillidahl looked like the best guy, but didn't get it done.
Yeah, the one thing I remember them talking about was that like Spratley or V-Rob scored off his reattacks. I think he probably seemed a little bit hesitant there to attack, and but also
Right.
all of his matches he was keeping close. I think he wrestled pretty reserved like a lot of the tournament, but he was winning those exchanges when it mattered. And that his semifinal was pretty. I mean, uh, just because of the way the other one was, with V Rob and Seymour, that Spratley Ventresca one was pretty interesting as they got into the last like exchange, a double overtime where he
Yeah,
got out, but then he got the takedown. And it was like, shoot, sweet. But yeah, it was fun, but yeah, like I said, the final was just a little bit like, man, I want to see some more action with these
for
guys.
sure.
But yeah, it was good. And then what year is V Rob again? Because he's coming back.
He's a freshman. I'm
Yeah,
almost positive.
first NC State champ since Machiavello,
I think that's
right?
right. I think
Yeah.
that's right. Yep.
But yeah,
So
all right. What about 133? Obviously, you got Bird winning it again against Ayala. I think we both picked Ayala to win, or no, you picked Bird.
yeah, I had Bird winning. I just thought Bird got all over him in the Big Ten final. Although he hit him with that, cement job and pinned him, he looked like he was on him at the beginning of that match. And I was getting a little worried in his round of 32 match. He almost lost to Hunter Leak first round, which would have been just probably the biggest upset of the tournament.
Yeah.
Having a 30, I think 32 seed or 33 seed beating the 1 seed, that would have been insane. So, but he ends up winning that and then just got better and better and better throughout the rest of the weekend. And it could have been some weight cut stuff, you think, maybe a little bit in that one, because towards Saturday night, man, he looked incredible against Drake. He didn't score a ton of points, really just got that one takedown, but he was on Drake the entire time. And yeah, he had an incredible weekend, national champion, and
Got another year.
gets a big smooch from his 6'3" girlfriend on camera, which is what a dog.
Sweet. So our my wife was watching it with us, Amanda, and when they're watching, they want to hear the backstories of it. And I was like, okay, well, I was showing like, oh, this is Luke Bird. This is his girlfriend right here.
This is
And then when
Lucas
it
Bird.
wins, I'm
You
like,
don't
wait,
want to pay
it's gonna see
attention
it.
to
It's
this
gonna
guy.
see it. It's gonna see it. So yeah, it was good. I mean, I think the biggest best tournament I think for 133, the Fugit from
Yeah,
Wisconsin. What a
huge.
tournament he had. 14 seed, upsets Nasir Bailey, makes it to the semis, loses Ayala 6-1, and then on the backside beats Braden Davis. I
Yep.
mean, still got fourth place, but like,
He
man,
kind of
what a
handled Braden. He kind of handled Braden Davis too. I mean,
yeah,
in that Conti semi comes out. I think he pinned Connor McGonigal in the quarters too. If I'm not mistaken.
yeah,
I'm not looking at results. I'm just trying to use all brain power, which is just kind of mush at this point. But we're just gonna roll. Yeah, Fugit, to me, the story from the bracket, besides Bird winning the title, he's the story. And then I would say just him beating Bailey and then Bailey, losing immediately again on the backside. Kind of a crazy exit for him. And another guy we forgot to talk about at 25, early exit, same as Bailey, Richie Figs getting pinned by Dean Peterson in that
yeah,
cradle and then losing immediately again on the backside. So, national champion is out after, the first 3 sessions. He's out. And then, Nasir, he was third last year, or no, fourth last year, and then he DNPs this year. So, to me, yeah, those were the stories at 33. Again, it was kind of, besides Fugit, and we talked about this, like without Fugit, it would have been one of the most chalky weights in a weight where it was kind of chaos, right? But it was fairly chalky. I mean, it all kind of happened, 1 seed wrestles the 2 seed in the finals. The guy that takes third is the 4 seed, and the guy that doesn't places, or the guy that takes fourth is the one guy that kind of went on a run
yeah.
and kind of blew up the bracket a little bit. So I don't know. It felt like a pretty chalky weight, except for obviously Fugit blowing it up.
Yeah, the only other one I say, with that one, and I am looking at the results, but Van D coming back and being able to All American after having an injury to fall after out of Big Tens, and it was just another amazing tournament from Nebraska. Like
Amazing.
he
Caleb
looked
Smith
good.
All Americans, Van D All Americans at 33.
Yeah,
We'll get into the other Nebraska guys as well.
yeah. So in 41, this is what I picked. I said
You did.
Mendez gonna come back and beat Bartlett. He's tired of losing to him, and then beat Hardy in the finals. And man, he looked good at this tournament.
Yeah.
He looked good.
We talked about it last week. You can tell early on whether a guy looks the part or not, like he's ready to win the title or not. I think you can. And
Yeah,
Mendez looked good from round 1, round 2, round 3, goes out there, beats Bo Bartlett, just dogs up, comes out, beats Bo, down 5 to Hardy, and storms back and beats Brock Hardy. He was going to do it. He was going to do it. And he looked like the best 141 pounder in the country out there this weekend. And he went out and just got it done. So, yeah, props to him. Like I said last week, I'm a huge Mendez fan. And so I like watching the guy wrestle. He just he hadn't had the results recently to look that way, but you always knew he could do it. So,
yeah. When he got, I mean, going through Lemley handily, Von Bauer handily, like I was like, okay, I think he can get it done. And then that semifinal match, a good match again with Bartlett, and Bartlett comes back and gets third, like kind of what we thought we would do, that 3-horse race in this weight. And
yeah.
Hardy having a great tournament still. Um, Looked
Yeah.
really good, and also
He's
a
got
guy
another
that I
year,
really like,
too.
and we might see them wrestle again next year without Bartlett in that way. All right, we had just a little bit of technical difficulties there. Just end up deleting about half that episode, but we're back. We're gonna pick
Episode
right
3,
back up.
3.5. Episode 3.5.
4.5, 4.5. But
That's
yeah,
what I said. That's what I
yep,
said.
we're gonna pick right back up. We were just talking about 141. I mean, the biggest thing, we had that rematch at the very end with Mendez and Hardy, and obviously Hardy came back, won that one, and we get to see those guys again. So that's gonna be sweet. Gonna be
Yeah,
sweet.
for sure. It's going to be cool watching those two. But, it's crazy what can happen in legitimately 48 hours. We recorded this first half of this episode on Monday, and then we recorded the second half, but it just didn't work. Like Alex said, technical difficulties. And then in about 48 hours, just portal mania. I mean, absolute portal mania. So Swiderski announced that he's committing to Oklahoma State, so I'm imagining he'll go either 41 or 49 for Oklahoma State, depending on what Tegan does. So those guys, you'll probably see those guys 41, 49, and then just absolute craziness, pandemonium. Nasir Bailey, Jordan Williams, both hop in the portal for Little Rock. Cody Chittum hops in for Iowa State. And then I think we had a few others that were popping in here and there. What were some names?
We kind of knew about was Ferrari, but he kind of made it official, and then
Yeah,
McNeil was that other big one, I think. Lachlan McNeil.
Lachlan McNeil. Yeah. He had announced I think yesterday, and then Ferrari today. So yeah, pretty crazy. Isaac Dean is in there, kid from Ryder, who was the 7 seed. I think he was a 7 seed, something like that. But the 7 seed at NCAA's, he was a freshman. So, a lot of those guys, it's probably just you hop in, see what you're worth, right? Kind of see what money opportunities are out there. Other guys, it's more so maybe haven't achieved their goals where they're at. I think that a guy like an Isaac Dean, maybe he's in a scenario where it's like, hey, we'll just test the market, see where we're at, because he's only been there a year. You probably can't base hitting or not hitting your goals. The guy had a pretty incredible freshman year being the 7th seed at the national tournament. But then you look at a guy like Swiderski and Chittum that have been where in their program they're at. Not saying that I'm just saying those guys because they've been there for a few years now, but maybe haven't lived up to expectations for what we thought they could have been. So,
Yeah.
I think there's a few reasons you get in, but we're going to see it even more. Obviously, we kind of had an idea that Ferrari would get in, and then, there's speculation that maybe he goes in and, tries to rekindle that bridge that he had with Iowa. So we'll see what happens. It's going to get even crazier. It's really just getting going, and I can only imagine some of the names. I think I just got notification that TJ Stewart hopped in, Virginia Tech All-American last year. So I think he's in as well. So man, it's
Schefter getting phone calls while we're
no, I'm the post Adam Schefter. Everybody else, you just got to know the guys to follow on Twitter that drop that drop it, and then turn notifications on so you can stay up to date. But yeah, it's going to get pretty wild. Let's finish up this NCAA recap and kind of put NCAA's to bed for. I think we were about halfway through, or just had finished 41.
Yeah, so we'll finish up with some more. I mean, and we're gonna keep on talking about the portal because it's pandemonium, as you said. But we get a 149-pound weight. This one was a lot of fun. The big matchups, obviously, like the Lovett Van Ness semis, and the Henson and Lovett rematch in the final. I know I did pick Lovett to win it all. I thought he would win. You picked a homer pick with Caleb Henson bringing it back. But yeah, that one was a lot of fun. I mean, the dark horse I know we talked about was Dylan D'Amelio, just a gamer, 13 seed, still in that bottom quadrant of the where that 4 seed is. I feel like it's always pretty dangerous. You don't really know who's going to come out of there. If you survive as a 4 seed, I think that's always pretty impressive. So, what were your big takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, Pinheiro, just to stay on the Iowa State theme, talking about Chittum and Swiderski, Pinheiro had pretty underwhelming performance. So, goes out there, loses first round, I think comes back and wins a match and then loses again. So, definitely opened up a window for D'Amelio. Not that D'Amelio couldn't have beaten Pinheiro, but just kind of opened up that window for him. And, he comes out finishing 4th. So that was pretty impressive from the 13 seed. But again, he had been an All-American before. We knew he had the ability. I think the most pressing thing, or at least the thing that stood out to me the most, was how Ridge Lovett can just win in so many different ways, right? He just got so many different ways to win a match, whether that's going out and kind of putting up a ton of points on you and dominating you, or it's more so, just making it a one position match, and maybe he rides you out and gets out of bottom and then, makes it a 2-0, 1-0 type of situation. So he's just got a lot of ways to win. And that was really the thesis coming into this, was watching him go through a struggle the first round and then just turn it on and start dominating from there. And then, you have that close match with Henson, which they've always had close matches. So I think you kind of just expect that now. But yeah, I thought Ridge looked great. Shane Van Ness comes back, takes 3rd, which I think everybody kind of expected. But, Henson finishes 2nd, really close match. Hate that for him because it could have been a back-to-back. He was the first champ in Georgia history, and then obviously would have been the first 2-time champ. So that would have just been really impressive. But yeah, Ridge getting it done. You feel for that guy. Feel pretty good for him.
He put it on, like you said, after that first one, and him against Van Ness was not close.
Not close. No.
It was impressive, and I think that was one we talked about. Like, that was kind of I wouldn't mind either of those guys winning in the final.
Yeah.
But when Lovett won, it's like, all right, he finally got one. So that was pretty sweet.
Yeah, and then Parco defaulting, I think that was a kind of a big deal because of, the transfers in, and then also just with Iowa really being underwhelming at a couple weights, and still taking home a team trophy, not having points from Parco really or Teamer, and still taking home a team trophy. Pretty impressive by them putting 3 guys in the finals. But yeah, man, just it kind of makes you think with guys like Parco and Teamer. I mean, these numbers that are out there that were given to these guys, and then the results you get at the national tournament. It's like, what's the motivation there? Maybe it's a little bit easier to kind of just, all right, I can hang it up because I know I've got this in the back pocket. Not saying that that's what happened. Just I think it may be a little bit easier to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't know. That was definitely a big part of the tournament, losing Parko and Teamer early.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of Teamer getting into the 57, I mean,
Yeah.
what a wild bracket that ended up being. I mean, nobody, I don't think, picked Blaze and even Antrell to make the finals as a 3 seed. And the way that like Blaze just put together a big tournament. I was glad that he got some recognition, after a little bit. We've heard his brother Marcus Blaze so much lately, and it was cool that he got there kind of on the big stage. I felt bad for them when they showed him after his match running away, but um,
He had a
the
sprint
upset,
going. Dude had an absolute sprint going.
yeah, the upset to KSAC. I mean, that one was just a game planned match. Came out, did
Yeah.
what he needed to do. I picked Fish to come back there to get the semis. He almost got into the semis, but didn't.
Yeah.
But what were some of your takeaways there?
I mean, I picked Meyer not to make the finals, so I'll take that. Just not to the. I just picked Ryder Downey to beat him and not Antrell Taylor. So, Anyways, no. Couldn't have been more wrong on this bracket, right? I mean, definitely not where we were thinking. Definitely didn't see Antrell winning. I think Antrell had been kind of dominated by Kasak, and a few years ago in freestyle, he had kind of been dominated by Meyer, but kind of won some of those exchanges and then against Meyer, those upper body exchanges, and then didn't have to go through Kasak again to win the title. So, yeah, congrats to him. I mean, back-to-back champs for Nebraska. Pretty cool for that program. Such a good year they had, and then the national tournament, just incredible. They looked awesome. So, yeah, good for him. KSAC comes back, beats Meyer. The kind of match everybody really wanted to see was in the Conci semis. So he beats Meyer for, to get into the third place bout. And then, Meyer takes fifth, KSAC takes third. And then, they interview Meyer, and we hear that he'd been in a coma like a month ago, which is wild, a coma, crazy. And then, we hear him basically accuse but not accuse somebody or multiple people or nobody of using steroids. So I don't know what that means. He just kind of like the most vague thing you could say of like saying someone's using steroids. And I don't know. I guess the way the timing worked, it kind of felt like he was either talking about Kasak or Antrell Taylor. I feel like if you put the dots together, you could probably say that he's talking about Kasak more, but dude, I have no idea. I thought that was really interesting. So there's been a bunch of stuff going on post. I mean, now we got Dylan Palacio and Bo Nickel jibber jabbering on Twitter, like the I guess rivalry we didn't know we needed was a
Right.
Twitter beef between Bo Nickel and Dylan Palacio.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. This is something else that's picked up since we re-recorded this. Is just the people going at it, and oh, it's so funny. But I mean, the dark horses. I mean, you gotta say Chumley that was that 20 seed, came back All-American, and
Yeah.
I mean made it to the semis, had a great tournament, and but yeah, I mean hats off to Nebraska for getting a Antrell in the finals and winning it. I mean, the stars kind of aligned there, but I mean, it was still pretty sweet for him to do that. And going on 165,
Yep.
getting into the bigger boys. I mean, this kind of went a little bit how we thought it would, up to chalk for the most part. Messenbrink show came
Yep.
in, dominated, even though he had a couple closer, I guess you could say. I mean, 5-0, and then didn't have the major in the finals, but he was controlling the whole time. So
Yeah.
big dark horse I'd say is Minto there from Nebraska. What another tournament, another Nebraska guy.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
There you are.
Okay. Yeah. Minto, I said this earlier in the year, man. He looked good all season, and I don't think he had his best Big Tens if I remember incorrectly. But man, throughout the entire year, even leading up to that, he wrestled Caliendo really tough. I mean, the guy's really tough, and comes in as a freshman, takes fourth in the country. So really impressive on Minto's part. Obviously, really impressive on Messenbrink. Goes wire to wire. all season, goes undefeated. He's one of the Hodge finalists, so him and Starachi and Hendrickson. So, good for those guys. I think you make a case for all the three of them. But yeah, really impressive season by him. Caliendo, great season by him, only losing to Messenbrink. And then Peyton Hall goes out into his career with a third place finish. So yeah, like you said, it kind of went a little chalky, kind of what we expected for the most part at this weight class. And I'll be curious to see what happens next year with weight changes. You got to think that Messenbrink and Caliendo will be back, but what guys are going to leave the weight, come up to the weight, etc. So this one next year doesn't I'm not sitting here super excited about it. Nothing I see in the future for this weight gets me super excited. Maybe like a Ladarian Lockett that comes into the weight for Oklahoma State and wrestles right away. But other than that, I don't see a whole lot out there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next year. I want some intrigue because I feel like this weight just was all right, Messenbrink, Caliendo, see you in the finals.
Yeah. The interesting part with this one that I think I said last time too is I forgot that Messenbrink just had won one title. It also just feels like he'd been around. It was a freshman.
He's just been dominating for it feels like so long. But what's great is we get another 2 years of him in college, which is awesome. So get to watch him for 2 more seasons. And quietly could have just an incredible Bo Nickel-esque career. Not quietly. It hasn't been quiet. I guess I shouldn't have said that. But just, could end up being second, first, and would be pretty impressive if he does so. Apparently, he's going 79 kilos at the U.S. Open, so going up to 74 maybe, which is intriguing because he doesn't look very big to me.
Yeah.
Looks like he could make 74 kilos pretty easily, but maybe not. So we'll see what he does for the U.S. Open, and we'll have some more freestyle content as we get going into freestyle season. We'll talk about some freestyle stuff. We'll get into kind of some lineup stuff as well. But for next year.
Well, next, one of my I think favorite weights of this tournament, 174. Just some great matches. Obviously, Dean Hamidi goes and beats Levi Haynes. Even just the run that he had all the way, beat Kennedy, beat Haynes, and then beat O'Toole in that rematch in the finals. Just was ready, I feel like, physically and mentally, and old DT got his first NCAA champ at 174.
Yeah, not to be outdone by Wyatt, right? If not for Wyatt, I think Dean is the outstanding wrestler of the tournament. Mm-hmm. I don't really think, what he did, I don't really think you have a comparison to. The only guy I think you could maybe give it to is Carter, just because of the legacy and the 5-timer and doing all that. But really and truly, looking at the level of competition and what he was able to going through a guy who had been second and first in Levi, and then going through a 2-time national champion in Keegan O'Toole, who was undefeated, who beat him 2 weeks ago. I really thought he looked incredible, gets it done, just looked like the best guy out there. It wasn't like a fluke win. He looked like the best guy on the mat when he was wrestling Haynes and O'Toole. And so much deserved national title for him. And like we were talking about, we might have recorded this and then we messed it up and everything. But one thing we were talking about was just how big recruiting is for moments like this. This is such a big thing for recruits watching the national tournament. You can have them on campus, you can do all that, but they're watching what your results are at nationals and seeing if you're putting guys on the top of the podium. And David Taylor, within less than a year, he passed a lot of tests as a head coach. So has just as many national titles as Penn State and Nebraska in year one. Very impressive on that end of things. And we will see. We'll see what trickles down from that recruiting wise. They just got Casey Swiderski announced today that he's committed. So like we were mentioned earlier, what else? What other dominoes come via portal? What other dominoes come via just hitting the recruiting trail from high school? Yeah.
Um,
What? Yeah, can they get Yazdani? I know him and David Taylor have a good relationship.
right.
Can they get him or somebody?
Yeah, but it does make, even already last year Oklahoma State being super attractive to transfer there, and now having two guys that transfer there within 1 year both win a national title, it just elevates that even more. So you're like,
100%.
okay, I can go there and win a national championship. So
And they can. I think anybody, I would be, look, I don't know what's going to happen with it. You just don't know how things play out. But Casey Swiderski was one of the best kids coming out of high school. Fargo champ, had some really good results, took 7th 2 years ago, and was right there with a lot of guys. Took a bad loss to Ridge at the national tournament 2 years ago, but hell, so has a lot of these guys in that weight at this point. Comes out, takes 7th. Tell me if he can't jump a level and wrestle with, I don't know who was 4th of that. I mean, D'Amelio's gone, Ridge is gone. I don't think it's crazy to think that he could jump up a level and wrestle with the Van Nesses and the Hensons. I'm not saying he will, but I don't think it's crazy to think. I think people would have said initially when Dean went to Oklahoma State, they would have just pigeonholed him at 3rd or 4th. And they would have said, oh, well, he's not beating Levi and O'Toole, right? Like, he's not on that level of guys. He's not beating those guys. And I would say the same thing right now about Swiderski. I would say he's not on the level of Van Ness and a Caleb Henson. But if you can take a guy like that and jump him up a level or two, it just makes you think a little bit. Like, if they have that ability, can he actually start pushing there? And then, you start steamrolling even more recruiting opportunities. And, you put him in a room. Look, he's going to have Joey McKenna. He's going to have Joey McKenna to train with. He's going to have all these guys around that weight, Carter Young, Taggin Jameson, that are still there, and guys that are going to be in the room for him to train with. Not that they don't have that at Iowa State. It's just, I don't know, man. It's a little bit different. And so some of these guys moving on to maybe what they say is greener pastures, but you just never know. I mean, he could turn out great. He could be 7th again. You don't know.
yeah. Well, just to finish off this 174 bracket, I think the two big surprises, and maybe not even surprises, but just great tournaments. Cade DeVos, 13C, comes out, comes back, All-Americans, but then his Conci semi match, the other guy I think we talked about last time too, Patrick Kennedy, came through and he is one guy from, maybe not just the one, but he's one of the guys from Iowa that you hear Shane Sparks say all the time, like, he embodies Iowa wrestling.
Right.
And he really does. And he was 11 seed, got 4th place last
He
week.
has another year. He has another year, and that's going to bring up a whole nother bag of worms, because unless he's hurt or he transfers, I have a really strong feeling that Angelo Ferrari will be the starter for Iowa at 184 pounds next year.
Yeah.
And so then that begs the question, are you going to bench the guy that just took 4th in the country last year at 174? They could. I'm not saying they can't, but, the only guy that's back that finished above him is Levi Haynes. So theoretically, he could be going into the season ranked 2nd in the country. And you're going to bench the guy that's ranked 2nd in the country? Not, like I said, not saying they won't, but that just makes you think, what happens with a guy like Gabe Arnold? Could we see him portal? He's come out multiple times and said he's super loyal to staying at Iowa and being at Iowa, and that's where he's committed to. And that's all well and good. And I want whatever the best is for all these guys. But, this eligibility goes fast, right? It goes quickly. It's not like the COVID days where you can hang around for eight years. All right, it goes quickly unless you have some freak accidents. But he's already used a red shirt. He wrestled this year at 84, which maybe wasn't his best weight. And, he has no podium. He wasn't on the podium this year, and he could be possibly on the bench next year. So I don't know, man. I don't know what's going to
Talking about
happen.
Arnold now, right?
Correct. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
correct. Talking about Arnold. And then, with Cade DeVos, like you were talking about earlier, shows up the guy he was last year. I mean, just comes out there, looks like the 2 seed that he was last year. And he looked really impressive all weekend. So, yeah, man. Some crazy stuff we got out of 74. It was a fun weight, much different than what we got out of 65.
yeah, yeah. Well, then, I mean, I know we started the night with it, and we didn't hit on
Yeah.
84 yet, right?
I don't think so.
So,
No, I think we hit on Wyatt. We were
yeah,
talking about Wyatt.
yeah. We started with that. I mean, you had to, because I feel like we couldn't hold that in. But
Yeah.
we got the legacy, like that matchup that we wanted in '84, Srirachi and Kekaizen. Still super close match, 4-3. Obviously, Srirachi making history, getting that first 5-time champ to ever do it. That was one. I mean, I think it could have gone either way, but I feel like most people still had Srirachi to win. The fun match for me in that one was that semifinal, and I think for a lot of people, just that scramble against McAnally that Kekaizen had, and I think that's a guy that makes me excited for this future of the weight class. And I'll let you get into the future weight class too, because I know you know like a lot of the guys that are coming in, but those are his Max McAnally's only 2 losses, Srirachi and Kekaizen this year as a freshman.
Right.
Looks massive at 84 and also just moves super well.
Right.
So I know he has some guys that are coming in, but right now he looks like he's one of the top dogs for next year.
Yeah, McAnally, I've never seen a guy impress me more in 2 losses than Max McAnally. The loss last week or 2 weeks ago to Starachi at the Big Tens, and then the loss to Parker. I mean, he just looked the part. He looked like he can wrestle with the best guys in the country, and really cemented himself as one of the best guys in the country, no matter if he's on the top of the podium or third on the podium. So really excited to watch him next year. Obviously, Carter Starachi, unprecedented 5-timer. He'll probably be the only one in history unless the rules change down the road where they let you have 5 years of eligibility. He'll probably be the only one. But really impressed by him going wire to wire that many years in a row. The consistency, really, really impressive. Awesome career from Parker Kekaizen, too. It's just like, you go back and look at his wrestle stat, and it's just, I mean, it's phenomenal. I mean, his resume is unbelievable. And, he just ran into Carter and ran into a generational type of guy. And so, Carter denies him of his second, and Carter picks up his fifth. But, yeah, getting into the next few years, we kind of are ramping up. So, like, 65, I'm like, next year, I don't really know. It doesn't get exciting me. 74, I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Got some of the top guys. 84, I'm like, oh, mass exodus. You lose Carter. You lose Parker. You lose Plott. You lose 3 of the top 4 guys. All right? Oh, you lose Foca. You lose 4 of the top 5 guys. And then the
Donnell Washington, who finally got his...
Yeah, good for him. Good for him.
Yeah,
throw him in there. He did. No, he did. He did. The top 2 returning placers will be Max McAnally, who finished 3rd, and Jackson Smith, who finished 6th for Maryland. So it'll be those two guys, the highest finishers. But then you insert Angelo Ferrari, who's going to be competitive right away for a national title. All right, he beat Dustin Plott in a similar way that McAnally beat Plott. Right, and even Plott was kind of riding McAnally early on. He was kind of controlling the match, and then McAnally kind of came back and got it in the 3rd. But that's a guy that's going to be ready to go right away. You probably insert a Zach Ryder for Penn State. A lot of age-level success for Zach Ryder, unless maybe you have a situation where Josh Barr goes down. I don't see that. I think it'll be Ryder and Barr up at 97, but... Zach Ryder, very intriguing prospect. Won the scuffle this year, so he's gonna be right in there, right in the mix. I don't know if he's that level, if he's wrestling with those guys, but he could. Does Rocco Welsh go up to 84, or does he go back down to 74? If he goes back down to 74, that's another interesting wrinkle. Him wrestling with like a Levi Haynes or a Patrick Kennedy. or could he insert into the 84 conversation? Who's Oklahoma State going to have at 84? Right? They're gonna have somebody good out there. Could it be, could Cody Merrill go down to 84? I don't know. Is he a 97? He could be. So it really they could get a transfer in. I mean, Oklahoma State could easily probably get a guy to transfer in and just be, fifth in the country, sixth in the country.
Yeah.
And then, Jackson Smith had a really close match with McAnally, went into overtime. Does he take a level up and is like, hey, I'm not amongst these guys where like a Carter just maybe had a little bit too much horsepower for Jackson, got a little blown out. Is Jackson in like every match with every guy? Like he's, because he kind of has that style where he wrestles a lot of close matches, and I could see him just being in a lot of close matches with some of these young guys. So, man, this weight is probably my most exciting weight next year with all the new faces we're going to see. And you've already got a star, or it looks like kind of a star in McAnally.
Yeah. And one of the guys you mentioned, Angelo Ferrari, now we're going to get into 197.
Yeah.
Who we thought was going to win the 97 bracket. And speaking of close matches, I mean,
close match king, man.
Close matches for him and just a lot of the 97-pound weight class. I mean, I think that's just kind of part of it. But, I think we both picked Ferrari to win. Obviously, loses to Buchanan in the semis, and then Buchanan wins against Barr in the finals again. And Barr got that. You did say Barr was going to make it to the finals. That Penn State freshman. I really thought that he was more hurt than he was, and lost some money because of it. No, I'm just kidding. And Buchanan, I think though, maybe I have to go back and look at one of our first episodes. We were talking about. I know we said for Big Tens, we were like Buchanan just looks different right now and looks really good and just had a great year, and he finished on top. Another guy that was finally able to get it done. So what are your big takeaways there?
Yeah, I mean, he went out and got it done. He looked like the guy he looked like all season. And I think, that's what Penn State does for the most part. They punch guys through to the finals. Barr did have a little wrap on his leg and comes out and still is able to win a bunch of close matches and finish, second on the podium. And then AJ loses. I really thought AJ wasn't going to show up for session 5, and he actually he even waited his match. You probably couldn't see it on TV, but he comes out. He's about to wrestle Joey Novak, Wyoming kid, and Novak's standing there for a minute and a half. And then finally Luke Smith, the coach at Bakersfield, comes out, and he's standing there, but no Ferrari still. And then Ferrari walks out, and then everybody's booing him. Boo, Even though he's walking out late. It's on AJ's time. That's what everybody's thinking. AJ wins a close match and then comes back for third and wrestles Cardenas. And then he does the same thing. He shows up a little faster, but does a similar thing where he takes a little bit to get out there. And ends up being the last match standing there. He's the last match. All right. No other wrestling's going on. Now, mind you, this session, there's no one there at this session. All right. Because everyone's hungover or they're just tired of watching wrestling. They're just whatever. I'm sick of watching wrestling. So this was the only match going on. Nobody had left. Nobody. Everybody was there. Okay. Everybody was still there. They were waiting on what was going to happen. Now, were they there because this match was high scoring? It scores a lot of points? No. They know how AJ Ferrari wrestles. It's boring. What do they want to see? They want to see the antics. They love this guy, even though they can't stand him. By the end of it, he had flipped the crowd. They were rooting against him. Now everybody was cheering. He lat drops his coach at the very end. Just AJ Ferrari antics. Comes out. Gives a crazy interview afterwards, just like he would always do. And then, sure enough, today, he's in the portal. Yeah. He's the most interesting man in the world. I mean, he's talked about like no other athlete. Curious to see what he does. Could he end up at Iowa with his brother? I don't know. Has he burned that bridge? Possibly. But, you got to think Barr will be back unless he moves down to 84. Cardenas gone. So this one's going to... 97 felt a little like there wasn't one guy you felt great about. And I think you're going to feel a little bit that way next year unless you've got those two. And then I think it would be just Barr, Ferrari, and then I don't think we're going to feel great about any other guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think there was probably a lot of people that felt that, like, will we see AJ Ferrari after he lost his first, like, collegiate match? That was, wait, no, he lost his freshman year before he won? Or did
Yeah, he lost to Noah Adams from West Virginia.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I
Didn't
think he
pull that
lost.
one.
I think he lost to Noah Adams twice, and then Noah Adams went on to be a cop after that. So
Yeah, he's probably been a cop for like 5 years.
he's been a cop for a while.
But yeah, I think a lot of people weren't sure if he was going to come back and wrestle for third. So I think that's cool. Like, maybe shows a little bit, like, can he build some trust back with these other coaches in the transfer portal? I don't know. So I'm glad. But I think the cool thing, I mean, about 97, mainly like Ferrari, Buchanan, but a lot of those guys, so interesting. I saw this tournament was they're just so tough on top. Like, I feel like the way that people ride is just a little bit different now too, and they're like making people scratch and claw their way out. It's either like you're out quick or I'm not letting you out for anything. And so those guys specifically though are pretty stingy when it comes to giving up escapes, and I think that's kind of cool to watch. I mean, you see those guys that are like, I'm not giving up point, and they make sure that riding time point is worth it, and that it usually always is because they keep these matches so close. But
yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely one of those weights where we didn't see a whole lot of points put up, but still a pretty intriguing weight. And I think when we're talking about next year, if Cody Merrill's at this weight, I think that's a guy that can compete right away. I really do. At least he's shown in the past he can compete with these guys. There was no real indication that Josh Barr was going to go up a weight and compete right away. Not to say that he didn't get way better his first year there, but I don't know how far away he is from some of these really high recruits at those weights. So we're going to see. It's going to be interesting, especially losing Buchanan and Cardenas and then kind of implementing a new regime with some other guys in there at this weight. It'll be interesting, but probably not as exciting as like a 184, but you're going to see some new blood at that weight. And then I know, man, we really mainly touched on 285 and Wyatt earlier, everything about that, so I don't want to get back into that. But, I know. Losing Wyatt, losing Gable, you're losing Colton Schultz, the top three finishers right there, losing Kirk, who really is the third best guy probably. So you're losing a lot, and then that's going to be another weight like 184 where there's just going to be new blood. You keep a couple guys around like a Keeter, a Feldman, guys like that are they're right there in the mix. Trumbull, I think, has some more eligibility. I'm not sure about like an Owen Treffin, but Jimmy Mullen, some of these younger guys that were really high level recruits, but we're waiting on, some of the Gables and the Hendricksons and the Kirkfleets and the Schultz to all graduate before they can really punch their ticket to maybe the finals or, maybe the third place match or something like that. So that's another weight to me where that's the biggest take. It was not the biggest takeaway. The biggest takeaway was Wyatt. But forward looking, I think you'll start to do some deep dives on heavyweight and go, wow, we got a mass exodus here.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And I think that was one of my biggest takeaways. I don't know if I mentioned already or not, but because it might have got deleted. But that it was just so cool to see this tournament. You saw flashes of the young guys in this next wave of just really good wrestlers coming in. But a lot of these guys that were finally like getting it done, like a Ridge Lovett, like Buchanan, Hendrickson, there was just so many that were like, okay, they've been here for a minute, but they actually got their hand raised at the end and are celebrating, and it was really cool to see, and I'm excited for the next generation of the guys coming in because that's kind of what it feels like. I think now we're moving past these COVID years, but what a weekend, some good wrestling. Yeah,
incredible. And we were talking, moving forward, we're going to get into some lineup predictions for 26 for a lot of these bigger teams. We're going to start doing a little deep dive, maybe some shorter videos, and that won't be as long, maybe 20, 25 minutes just hitting on, what could be the potential lineups for some of these guys. with recruits coming in. And then there will be more and more information about transfer portal. We'll get into some more freestyle stuff. So that'll be exciting. We're getting into a time of the year where, yeah, the wrestling season's over. We're not watching wrestling, but the drama is at an all-time high with recruiting, transfer portal, U.S. Open stuff around the corner. So it's like one of those times of the year where it almost feels like we're still riding the momentum of the national tournament. We just keep riding it with news and stuff like that. It's a pretty cool time of the year, so I'm excited to really talk to you and deep dive a little bit more with some of these things and get into some lineups, get into maybe some predictions, long throw predictions at some of these weight classes, and it'll be good.
It'll be good. Yep. Penn State got 10 All-Americans here.
Second time ever.
We're gonna do some dive into that. When's it gonna happen again? And then also
could happen next year.
Yeah, honestly. So, yeah, man, it's been good. We've gone over for sure, but hey, we had to. I like going.
NCAA's a recap. You got too much to talk about.
Too much. All right. Well, we'll be back at it. Appreciate you guys for watching. Like and subscribe. Retweet.
Like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow on Instagram. Share the reels. Let's start pumping these numbers up. We got some rookie numbers.
Pump them up. All right. See ya.
Later.